Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Maria Luisa Garnica, and I am the Education USA advisor here in Guatemala. And today we have a special session prepared for you. We're going to talk a little bit about sports in the university environment in the US. We have our special guest from University of the Incarnate Word, Isaac Sanchez, who's going to share some important information and some tips in his experience and perspective as a recruiter in Latin America. Before we get started, I just wanted to share a little bit about our layout and also welcome you and ask you if you would kindly share with us which country you're joining us from in the chat. I know there were some people from outside of Guatemala. I know there were some people in Central America, or maybe all of the Americas, or outside, right? So everyone's welcome. If you can share with us in the chat which country or city you're visiting virtually from, that would be great. And at the second point, we're going to dive into the content that Isaac prepared for us. It's going to be hopefully very fruitful for you and you're planning to apply to US colleges and universities. Perhaps you're a sports person and you're interested in exploring that path. And then we will finish with the question and answer section. If you are on Zoom, could you please share your questions as we go along with the user Q&A so that we can gather them and ask them to Isaac toward the end of our session. Just very briefly, what is Education USA? Remember, Education USA is your official source of US higher information. We are a network from the US Department of State that is present around the world. And we highly encourage you to reach out to us to find your nearest advising center. You can search for us on social media, or you can use the QR code to reach our education.state.gov website that has a lot of information and that would allow you to specifically search for an advising center in your city. So now, without further ado, thank you for everyone who's here. I insist, tell us which countries you're visiting from. Maybe when you ask your questions, tell us where you're joining from. That would be really cool. And without further ado, I'm gonna pass it over to Isaac, who has a lot of information to cover and who will be really happy to answer your questions at the end. Take it over, thanks.
Thank you, Maria Luisa, for the kind introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here talking to all of you. Welcome. Let me share my screen. Maria Luisa, just give me a thumbs up just to make sure it's up and running. Okay, perfect. So just like Maria Luisa said, this is a very special topic. Speaking from myself, I was a student athlete back in the day. Nowadays, I barely play soccer. I kind of switch into cycling and biking, mountain biking, and all that. But soccer keeps a special place in my heart, and just sports overall. It was the door that allowed me to change and transform my life for the good. So I'm always happy to share my experience and give you guys some tips about the recruiting process and just a few recommendations for you to move forward into an American institution along with the playing experience. So here's the game plan for today. My coach used to say that a goal without a plan is just a wish. So keeping that in mind, we're going to cover the student athlete experience, how to get noticed by coaches. I'm going to provide some tips and recommendations on that note. Sports resume, highlight reel videos, how to use social media for the best, and especially how to get that exposure as a student athlete. We're going to provide also an overview of the different leagues and divisions that we have in the college system. So hopefully you have a pretty good background of how college sports operate in the US and the opportunities available for you. Okay, let's dive into it. most of you hopefully know about the NCAA or NCAA. This is arguably the most prominent league in the United States. And within NCAA, there's different divisions. So you have Division One, Division Two, and Division Three. And then we have NAIA, which is parallel to the NCAA, like a separate league, but still offers really competitive sports and great scholarships. You also have the opportunity to play at institutions that offer academic programs of 2 years. So the idea of joining a team like this is for you to get that exposure, play for 2 years. It kind of helps with your transition into the US, and then you can always transfer over to a 4-year institution. So with all this, the main message for you today is that there's different pathways, and and there's different ways for you to reach that dream of playing college sports. The the graphic that I had here is basically lines up all the different divisions we have in the US and two important questions along it. What school do I choose to play, and what division can I play? So there's many institutions at different leagues, different divisions. Some of them are top 25 in the nation. Some of them might not be at that competitive level, but offer great academics, great location, great diversity. I don't know. There's a lot of variables. So the idea is that you do your homework and find that best fit for you, both academically and within your sport. Okay, so just to summarize real quick, the main differences, and for you to have a better picture of the whole landscape in college sports, we have the NCAA Division One, highly competitive, really good scholarships. Usually, public institutions compete at the D1 level. Um, Usually, they have the biggest budgets out there, but that does not mean that's 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 the top league. I've seen, for instance, in my sport, in soccer, I've seen Division 2 schools that can compete head to head with a top 25 Division 1 school. So usually in Latin America, we have this perception of Division 1 being better than a Division 2 just because our professional leagues cannot operate in that way with a relegation system, meaning if you're a team competing at the Division 1 professional league, but if you don't do well enough, you might get relegated to a second division. And the other way around, if you're a Division 2 professional team, you're competing to get a top spot and reach the Division 1. It doesn't operate that way in the college world. You have divisions mainly, I will say, structure by budget, by location, by how many students you have in your institution. There's different factors, but it's not a competitive parameter. And just to continue on that, Division 2 schools offer equivalency scholarships, meaning a coach can have a specific amount of money for him or her to distribute in as many players as he or she would like. So different from some Division 1 sports where you might have only a specific number of scholarships allowed to distribute in a certain number of players. In equivalency sports, you can split up those amounts, and, and instead of only providing scholarship to 9 students, you can divide that amount of money into as many players as you would like. Division 3 main difference is that you will not receive an athletic scholarship. It is only an academic scholarship that you will end up receiving. There's really good Division 3 schools. They compete at a really high level, but academically they're a little bit more focus on getting good grades and not so much in competing. I already talked a little bit about NAI schools. These are composed of 4-year institutions, usually small private colleges, usually institutions located in the outside of the big cities. They offer full and partial scholarships as well, just like a Division II school. And already talked about 2-year institutions, the junior college. I've seen so many athletes going through this type of institution just to get exposure, just to get playing time, and then transfer out to a 4-year school. So this is a really good route for someone that is really focused on sports and would like to have uh, an opportunity to transfer out into a different location, a different division. Um, Now, in recent years, club sports has been a trending topic. Basically, club sports does not compete in the NCAA, does not compete in the NAIA, does not compete at the junior college. It's a different setup. It mimics a lot of the dynamics of these leagues, but basically you compete at a more recreational level. So I will put it this way: this is kind of like a step up from a intramural team. So you have the opportunity to represent your university, compete against other universities, but the caliber and the competitiveness of these leagues is more recreational. So the idea is for you to have fun, yeah, benefit from all the advantages that can give you sports and athletic participation, but it's not the same commitment, and you're not required to be as engaged in this type of setup. So we have traditional and not traditional sports, just like soccer, basketball, volleyball. You can have all of that, but also sports like rugby, triathlon, esports. It's very trending right now. So hopefully this gives you a better idea of how the college world is laid out. Now, let's talk a little bit about the numbers, and we're gonna focus on the NCAA. You can see the graph here. This is a survey that was made by the NCAA, counting student athletes that will transition. So student athletes are in high school that make the transition into an NCAA school and compete there. It doesn't matter the division. It encompasses all 3 divisions from high school in the US into NCAA. And as we can see in the graph, the numbers are relatively low. Basketball, probably the most competitive of all sports, because you really have to have certain type of athleticism and body strength and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult to compete at this level as a foreigner, but obviously there's opportunity. And for instance, soccer, that is very popular in Central and South America, we can see something close to 6%. So I don't intend to discourage you guys with these numbers, but it's just the reality. NCAA is very competitive. We are competing not only against American athletes, but also athletes from all over the world, and the margin is very slow, very minimum. Now, let's talk about cost, because sometimes we have this idea that if I receive a scholarship, it's going to be a full ride, and that's the only option. And no, we already talked about that a little bit. You might receive a specific percentage or a specific amount of money to study in any institution. The average cost of tuition, just tuition, meaning it's not covering housing, meals, insurance, all that. So taking all that out of the equation, tuition is around 20 to 40K a year to study in a 4-year institution. And the average scholarship that we see in the NCAA is somewhere around 18K a year. So if you do the math, you can notice real quick that there's going to be some amount in most cases where you're going to have to end up paying out of pocket to study in the US. Now, granted, a full ride, it is 100% possible, but probably you're not going to get it right away. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. Transitioning into the student athlete experience. Speaking from myself, I can tell you that one of the very first things that I was told when I arrived to the university, and one of the first things that my coach told me was that you have to be a student before becoming a great athlete. So the focus is really on grades and is on being successful on the classroom. Now, all the rest is separate. You have to be able to manage both things, but the main idea is that you have to have good grades to compete because the league is very strict and it has very specific rules about grades, about commitment to the classroom, and then there's a different aspect of how you're going to compete and how you're going to maintain that eligibility. But I can tell you that the focus is great and is the focus is really on getting good grades before anything else. Now, a Division 1 and Division 2 institution usually offer athletic scholarships based on performance. So, what I mean by that, usually when you arrive into a D1 institution or D2, you're gonna sign a contract, and usually this is a 1-year paper that you're gonna sign, and it's based on performance. So if you don't keep your grades and if you don't perform on the field or on the pitch, there's a chance that you might lose some of that scholarship or the full amount, or maybe you're not eligible to compete because your grades are so low. So you gotta keep in mind that you're signing a contract, you are committing to being a student athlete, and there are certain rules that you need to follow. If you don't follow the rules, if you don't perform as is expected, there's a chance that you might lose that scholarship. And lastly, in order to keep that commitment, it is required a great time management skills. I have friends that are studying, for instance, engineering during my time in college. And trust me, those guys were hitting the books hard, working really hard on the field, and some of them even working afterwards, after practice. So the key here to succeed at this type of environment is to have really good time management skills and the drive and the determination to keep getting better and better without losing that balance between grades, school, some of them work. So my next slides talk about what coaches are looking for and what the recruiting process looks like moving forward. So I highlight 4 things here. A coach is going to look, obviously, for a well-rounded student athlete. They want to see athleticism, they want to see experience in the sport, they want to see evidence of talent. Obviously, they want to see those grades. And there's also a process that you have to complete before even getting accepted into the university. So, talking about grades, Division 1, for instance, requires a minimum GPA of 2.3. And let me take a step back on that. In the US, there's a 4.0 grading system, meaning that a 4.0 will be the equivalent of a 10. From 0 to 10, 10 will be the highest grade. Well, in the US, it will be 4.0. In order to compete at the D1 level, there's a requirement by the NCAA to be at a very minimum of 2.3. If you're planning to compete at a Division 2 school, the minimum requirement is 2.2 GPA. Now, your institution might have an additional requirement to be enrolled, and that's school policy. For instance, at UIW, my institution, the minimum GPA is 2.5 to even get accepted into the university. So two separate things. One is complying with the NCAA, the league, and the other one is being in compliance with your institution. Very, very important. Evidence of talent. We're gonna cover all that here in a second. How to create a highlight, what you should have on it, how to create a sports resume, so on and so forth. So very important to have that evidence of talent and kind of like a sports portfolio for you to get that exposure and get in front of coaches. And last but not least, very important, there's a process in which you must register in the NCAA for them to screen you, not only academically, but also to check if you are maintaining a amateur status. What do I mean by that? So there might be some instances of players that at a really young age might have some professional experience. And the NCAA and the other leagues, this is general across the line, they make a great effort to keep things fair and make sure everybody has an amateur status, meaning you have not played professionally, you have not received any money to compete at any level, and basically they're trying to keep a fair playing level field. So you must register at the NCAA Eligibility Center. You must submit all your transcripts, submit all your documents, and they're going to ask also about your playing experience. And there are some instances of players that maybe have taken 1 year out, and usually, the NCAA might ask, okay, if you were not studying during that time, what is that you were doing that during that year that prevented you to get into school, for instance? And they do that because, again, they want to prevent professional athletes to kind of join the college world. One last piece here for talking about NCAA rules. Back in the day, this is before August 2023, it was required for you to submit a SAT test score or ACT score. This is a standardized test and where you must have a minimum requirement, a minimum score to be eligible. This is not required anymore. It kind of changed with the pandemic, and also a lot of institutions kind of got rid of that requirement within their admissions process. If you are planning to do your SAT or ACT test, that's fine, go for it, because like I said, many institutions might still require that, but for the NCAA and for college sports purposes, this rule has been removed. Well, I'm gonna share a clip from a highlight reel video. What I really like about this video here is that it is very well structured, it's short, it's concise, and without having a Hollywood production, it kind of sends the message across. It's very neat. Here, not seeing the quality of the player, but we're seeing a couple things. The spotlight effect that you see on screen, where it freezes, you see a yellow dot popping up on the screen. That really helps coaches in determining what player they're evaluating, because otherwise you're seeing 11 players in white, 11 players in blue, and you have no idea what's the person you're trying to evaluate. Also, I also point out the 20-second rule, and this also applies when you are just meeting someone. You want to create a really good impression, a really good first impression. So within your first 20 seconds on the clip, we want to see goals, we want to see assists, what we call power plays, things that really stand out within the game. And I'm showing soccer right now, but this applies to any sport. It could be individual sport or a team sport. You want to start with your best actions within the first 20-30 seconds. um, Keep it professional. I already mentioned that you don't need a lot of editing skills to do this. You can do it on your own. Ideally, we want to have game real situations and have variety. And this depends on every sport. But for instance, in soccer, we want to see defensive actions. We want to see attacking actions. It depends on the position, but have some variety of plays. We had the experience that during the pandemic, a lot of people had no playing time because there was just no leagues running at that time. So they had to get a little creative, kind of like recording sessions, 1v1s, 2v2s, trying to mimic what's done in a real game. So you can always do that. Um, and last but not least, if you want to add some music or highlight effects or things like that, that's fine. Just keep it professional. Remember that this is your brand, your personal brand, and you want to come across as someone that is committed, that is professional, and that's it's like applying for a job. You want to put your best self out there. Same thing applies with your resume. Nothing special here, pretty straightforward. We want to see your contact info. We want to know where you have played, all your soccer background, soccer, volleyball, baseball, whatever it is. We wanna see and have um, tournaments, events, national competitions that you have excelled, to have that evidence that you've been at that level competing. Obviously, academics is important. Usually, if you state your GPA at the top of the resume, that's really good. But also, if you have received any special awards or recognition, that's really good to include. Likewise, with awards that you have received within your sport, MVP, leader in assist in X year, all that really helps out. Because let's be honest, coaches also might look into all that, go a quick Google search, and make sure everything is legit. No, references, very, very important. We want to have information from previous coaches, maybe from school coaches. It could be from clubs. If you're playing at a national level, we want to hear from those coaches and those admins that are supporting your journey as an athlete. And last but not least, highlight reel. Doesn't matter, again, if you are competing at a individual sport or team sport, we want to see you on video. And this usually applies to every single sport. Okay, once you have your sports resume and once you have your highlight reel video ready to be sent out, I'm going to give you some tips on how to connect with coaches. And my number one tip is obviously Google the university and go to the university athletics website. Here you're going to find all the information about the roster, the coaching staff, if the team is doing well or not. Kind of gives you an idea of what level they're competing at, etc. So real simple. You can Google the name of the institution. In our case, it will be UIW Athletics, and immediately something like this will pop up on your screen. Usually, there's a specific section where you might see something like this: prospective student athlete form, where basically they have already created a template with all the information they need, and that usually you have included in your resume. But if you just copy that information into these forms, they receive all the information automatically, and it goes to the specific sport you are trying to get into. So that's a really good tip. Check if the university has some sort of form like that, um, and also have your sports resume ready on a PDF format. Why is that? Well, because the next step, once you have submitted those forms, the next step is to contact the coach directly. So you're gonna draft an email where you are basically introducing yourself and expressing your interest in becoming part of the team. Here you can attach your high level video and your sports resume. So I'm gonna show you a couple email templates that you might wanna use. And here's a really bad example of what not to do. This is a horrible email, and it is pretty obvious why is that. The last thing you want to do is create one of those email chains where the same message goes to everybody. No, we want to see emails that are personalized, that show interest, that show that you actually took the time to research the institution and make it very personal. uh, Remember, the main goal of contacting coaches is to have a great first impression and to start a conversation, start a dialogue. So here's, for instance, a template of a really good email that we received back in the day, where they introduce themselves. Um, you know, they talk about their GPA, graduating class. That's also important. Let me tell you that especially at the D1 level, they're recruiting 1 or 2 years ahead. So, if we are right now, I can tell you our coach is looking for athletes for 2025, and that's the reality of it. When should you start contacting coaches? My recommendation is sophomore year, because there are certain rules about coaches talking to recruits. So they're not allowed to contact athletes until they have reached their sophomore year, and they have specific time frames to do that. So you can start doing all this in your freshman year, but chances are you're not gonna get a lot of responses. Okay, last but not least, social media. We all know that this is huge. It has become a great platform for you to show your skills, what you're all about. Um, Again, just like a resume, this is how you're presenting yourself to the world. So keep it professional. Make sure you keep it visible. I always talk about making the algorithm work on your favor. So hashtags, following the university, the coaches, trying to engage with the staff actually, or current athletes. That's really good. I have a really good story of someone that just started talking to the strength and conditioning coach, and he kind of opened up the opportunity for him to reach out to the head coach. So things like that. Just be creative. Use this platform on your favor. Obviously, include your highlight reel video on the links that you can post on, depending on the platform you're using. But this can be done on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and it's becoming more and more popular, because also coaches are going into these platforms and trying to understand what type of person you are, what kind of player you are, and how you're presenting yourself out there. So this is really cool, a really cool fact. 83% of college coaches said that they conducted some sort of online research on their recruits. 80% of them look into Facebook, 82% have used Twitter, 54% have looked into Instagram. And, you know, I took this information from a couple of years ago. This might have changed a little, um, but just be mindful that this is a great platform to get exposure. And finally, some words of wisdom. This is not coming from me. This is coming from Matt Barnes here on screen. He's the coach that recruited me, the guy that gave me the opportunity, and the guy that changed my life. So when I told him about this opportunity to talk about recruitment, he said, be realistic about your abilities and what level you can play, as a number one tip that I would like to share with you guys. Spend time researching schools, soccer programs, really do the homework. Make sure you present an email that is personalized and that really shows interest in that specific institution. Do well in school. If you are in sophomore, junior year, obviously senior year, make sure you keep those grades up and make sure you are also involved in sports, but also in other type of activities. So make sure you are a well-rounded student athlete, not just focus on your sport, but make sure you diversify a little bit, being on X or Y club, um, getting involved with other activities. And last but not least, be patient. Sometimes, coaches receive a lot of emails, a lot of communication, a lot of messages on social media. So just be patient. You already know about this rule. You are not gonna receive a answer if you are not a sophomore. That's for starters. And then just know that they receive hundreds, if not thousands, of emails of people wanting to compete and be part of those teams. So be patient, be creative, and always be prepared, because you never know who's watching out there. There's a lot of coaches that go abroad and they're recruiting. There's also opportunities for you to attend some events or showcases, so that's also really good. But just try to start that conversation. Let them know where you're playing, what are your plans for the future. If you are attending a big tournament or a big competition, let them know, so maybe they can make the trip and see you compete. And basically that's it. I really appreciate the time. Hopefully I didn't go too long on this. There's my contact information. You can always reach me out on my email, on WhatsApp, and please follow us on social media. University of the Incarnate Word is located in San Antonio, Texas, a beautiful city. We have a beautiful campus with a Division I institution. We also have a really robust club team in different sports: soccer, volleyball, basketball. We have a really successful triathlon team. So again, we have great academics, more than 90 academic programs, um, ranging from engineering to business to 3D animation and game design. So a lot of options for you guys. So again, my advice is reach out, do your homework. From our end, we're gonna do our best to help you navigate the system, and hopefully you can achieve that dream of coming to the US. Maria Luisa, I don't know if we can start the Q&A section.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Isaac.
My pleasure.
That was really interesting and really useful. I think just a couple of the highlights that you shared that I took notes on is, in my opinion, one of the most important one is do your homework. And
Yes.
the expression that could be useful is this concept of best fit and exploring the different categories. So yes, sports will be important, given that you're here in the session, but also think academically. What do you want to study, right? What do you want to specialize in during those 4 years of undergraduate career? And then also financially or otherwise, what kind of experience and context do you want to have? How much money can your family invest in your international education? And this is where also Education USA, as your advisors, we can help you out with kind of reflecting on different kinds of questions so you can start finding out what is that best fit? What does that look like? And in the US, there's thousands of universities. So the best fit doesn't have to look the same, right, Isaac? It doesn't, not
Yeah,
the schools that you'll apply to have to be NCAA Division I schools, right? There may be some other options that are absolutely perfect for you, but they may look different. The other
absolutely, absolutely. And just Maria Luisa, let me add on to that because that's a great pointer. You cannot imagine the amount of people that reach out to me and say, "Oh, yeah, I want to play Division One, and that's all I want. I'm a D1 athlete, and I know I can be there." And always my answer is keep your options open, because Division One does not mean that's the best league or that has the best athletes. Find that best fit for you. That when you plug in all those variables, academics, location, tuition cost, scholarships, whatever, make sure you choose that option that is going to bring you the most benefit. And usually Division One might not be, um, you might not receive all the playing time that you would like, and maybe your experience will be much better in a D3 institution. I personally didn't play Division One. I ended up playing in a small school in Arizona, and it was an NCAA. It was NAI school, but I had the best time of my life. Played for years there, and I loved it. And I had great academic experience as well. So do your homework and try to find that answer, solve that equation that plugs in all the variables that you're looking for.
Yes, and that leads me to my second highlight from what you said is remember this is a very competitive world that you may be trying to get into. So keep in mind the flexibility and plan Bs, maybe plan C. So yes, go for your dreams and act towards those dreams, but always have a plan B in case this doesn't work out. And then remember that first impressions are important. So it ties back into step number one, which is do your homework so that your first impression through that contact email to your coach or to their recruiters can be very fruitful, right? So Isaac, we have one question. So if the school has academic scholarships, can I mix sports and academic scholarships as well?
Yes, that's a great question, and it may depend on the different policies of the schools. But for instance, I can tell you that at University of the Incarnate Word, any student that is applying to the university, if their grades are good enough, they can automatically receive academic or what we call merit scholarship. Now, if you are also a student athlete, that's a different story. Your coach might offer you, I don't know, an additional $5,000 a year. Well, that can sit on top of whatever academics you have achieved or you have earned. So great question. It can be mixed. Usually, this may change depending on the institution and the different policies, but it is common practice to combine both. Yeah.
Right, thank you. We have a specific question about the reel. Should there just be one video, one reel, or should there be a couple? Or is that, for example, where social media can come into play in that you can have more videos there?
Yeah,
Or is it one, the etiquette?
that's a great question. I would say the merrier the better, right? So the more you have out there, the better for you. And let's be honest, the level of improvement can be very significant from one year to the other. We see soccer especially that sophomore transition into your junior and senior year is completely different story because you're developing physically, athletically, mentally, and sometimes a completely different player. So yeah, I also see that um, room of improvement and that grit that you have shown in how you're getting better and better over time. Great question.
Great, thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about intramural sports? What are they? Can anybody play them? Are they available, do you think, at every school?
Yes, it is. I would say this is common practice at universities in the US. It's part of the college experience and campus life activities. Basically, intramurals is a tournament that is played within the student population. So you can be from the business department and you can get together and get together with your friends and put a team in soccer, for instance. And there might be a group of engineers that they're doing the same. And the school organizes this tournament where you compete within the university boundaries. Now, I mentioned club sports. The main difference between club sports and intramurals is that in club sports, you represent the university competing against other universities. So usually there's a league, there's a score system, and it kind of mimics what's done at the NCAA level in a way that you might have a conference tournament, and then if you win, you might go to a national tournament and things like that. So it can get very, very competitive at the highest level, but it is much more recreational. And the main difference is that usually there's no scholarship at the club level.
All right, thank you. The next question would be, should I contact both the coach and the recruiter, or should I just contact one of them? For example, in my sophomore year or in my junior year, what would you recommend?
Okay, so those are two different processes. One is contacting coaches and trying to get recruited by your sport. And the other process is the application and the admission to the institution. So my advice, talk to your advisor first, and meaning, the person that is helping you with the recruitment, with the admission process. Once you are kind of ahead of the game and getting ready to get accepted into a university, then it's easier for them to reach to the coaches and say, hey, Maria Luisa plays volleyball. She's a great player. She's already been accepted. Can you take a look at her highlights? We can do that as admission reps, but not the other way around. And why is that? Because usually, we might have great athletes that might not be eligible, might not enroll in other university because they do not fulfill the minimum requirements. So if you're in sophomore year, start contacting coaches, start contacting rep, make sure you're ahead of the game. And when the time comes, you already done all the homework again, and you already have one step forward into the institution.
Great, thank you. And on that regard, I would also recommend you get to know the personality of the institution so that you can see those kinds of elements that are in harmony with your own personality, and that you can, in the application process, you can actually talk also beyond the sports, how you actually match, how the match is both ways, right? You and the institution are made for each other. One last question, Isaac, is about when you mentioned professional experience. Does this mean only having received money for your sports, or what else does that entail?
Okay, this is quite a complex topic because the definition may vary, right? What does it mean to be professional? Sometimes we might hear players go like, I played third division in Mexico, but I do not receive money. So um, you have to be careful with the way you put yourself out there. My recommendation is that if you're playing third division professional in Mexico or whatever, don't use the word professional. Just say I'm on the academy team. Um, Now, if you are receiving money, things might get a little complex. Why? Because, and this is, I forgot to mention this, but this is very, very important. Usually, you receive 5 years eligibility, meaning you can compete 5 years at the college level. If you play professionally or the NCAA notice something, they might take out 1 year eligibility or two, and I've seen cases where they can even take 3 years out of your eligibility because you have played some sort of professional level. So um, they're very strict on this process, and it's becoming, with the internet and social media and all that, it's becoming harder and harder for former professional athletes to go into the college route. Um, so just to summarize, you have 5 years eligibility. If you are competing at some sort of professional level, make sure you're not receiving money, and just know that there's a chance they might deduct 1 or 2 years eligibility out of your playing career.
All right, thank you. And we got a very specific question. I'm going to read it verbatim. Um, about the transcripts in the NCAA Eligibility Center. I have been trying to send them, but I got confused. I don't know if I have to send them on my own or if I need an official email to send them, like an official translator. Do you understand the question a little?
Okay, so it seems to me like this specific person is sending the transcripts by email. And if that's the case, this is not considered a official transcript. So usually the NCAA requires that the institution forwards the documents on behalf of the institution, not Isaac Sanchez applying to UIW, sending the documents by himself. Maybe that's one of the reasons why we're getting confusion there. In order for an official document to be official, it has to be sent out by someone else, in this case the institutions, or has some sort of stamp from a official translator. We call it in Spanish perito traductor, right? But it might change depending on the country you're in.
Okay, thank you. I guess to this person who has this situation, maybe you can reach out to your school counselor if you have a person that is your counselor, or reach out to your Education USA office. Maybe the office we can help out. We can ask around and help you specifically. Okay. But yeah, that was the last question so far. Thank you so much, Isaac. Thank you so much to everyone who joined. And hopefully this content is going to be useful. We will have it available on our YouTube. And remember that Education USA is here to help you in your application process to the US. And hello to UIW in San Antonio. Thanks so much for collaborating and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Maria Luisa. Please follow us on our social media, uiw.international. You've seen my contact information as well. I'm gonna share again on the chat my email, just in case you have any additional question, and I'll be happy to connect with all of you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Isaac, and have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Likewise, thank you, everyone.